Hello everyone, this is Sukanya Rana and today we are going to discuss the mains question with respect to your day 7 of the Streak Daily Initiative, and I hope that you have gone through the syllabus for this particular day. So day 7 we had topics like special provisions with respect to states and union territories and also your scheduled and tribal areas. Basically what we are going to talk about in this section is the 5th and the 6th schedule. Now, I hope you've also attempted the questions, you've written the answers, and through this video, you can basically cross-check your answers. So, before I particularly move on to the first question, there's one thing that I would like to add here is, guys, there's this link for Samanvaya form that is provided in the description box. Please go and register on it because if you register on it, you can get all the PDFs of all the prelims as well as the mains questions that we discuss on a daily basis in a compiled one place form. And also other than that, we are offering some free material which is present on our website in a PDF form which can be easily downloaded and it's pretty readable. So I think all that material will help you frame a better approach towards this examination, right? So let's get to our questions. Now the very first question for today was in fact talking about the 5th schedule. Now the 5th schedule and 6th schedule I think are important from both the mains and the prelims point of view. You have a lot of questions that have been asked from 5th schedule, and similarly even mains in recent past there has been a question on scheduled tribes. So the question here is what are the protections that are afforded to the scheduled tribes in the 5th schedule of Indian Constitution? So if you look at this question, there are a couple of keywords that you are looking into. Number one, we're talking about the protections or the safeguards that are provided to scheduled tribes, right? So that is one important portion on this question. Next is 5th schedule of the Indian Constitution. So obviously we're going to talk about each and every aspect of this particular questions in all the three portions, that is introduction, body and your conclusion. So let's look one by one what should come in your introduction, what should come in your body and what should be there in the conclusion. So obviously the question was on a broader range talking about the 5th schedule. So you should start your introduction by giving me a short explanation of what is 5th schedule, what comes under 5th schedule, and you can also link it to the constitutional article, that is article 244. So this is important because you have to give me an introduction before you talk about the safeguards that are provided in this particular schedule. You have to talk about what does it contains, right? So once you've defined what is 5th schedule, or once you've defined the idea behind scheduled areas, then next thing that you're going to talk about is what are the elements through which certain areas are defined or brought under the 5th schedule. So obviously, see, the president by his order can declare any area as scheduled area. Now also through a ruling that a president can also alter the boundary, add new area, remove the area. So all that power is there with the president, right? But there are certain criterias upon which this particular decision is taken. So criterias like say the social backwardness, the economic backwardness, a lot of unemployment in the region. It is also dependent upon how much tribal population is there in that particular area and what is the size of that area. So there are a lot of different criterias upon which it depends whether a particular area will be part of the 5th schedule or not. So what you can do is you can draw a small diagram and write on what criteria does it qualify to become part of 5th schedule. You can talk about that. And lastly, in the introduction you can mention like which all areas right now in India are present or part of the 5th schedule. So currently there are 10 states, some areas in 10 states which are part of the 5th schedule, and some examples include like Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and you can look into the list. right? So this was your introduction. I think this is a foolproof introduction. Now directly if you look into the question, if you look here, the question is directly asking you what are the protections, right? So before coming to that point, if in our body we could add certain small section, again this will not be a very comprehensive and detailed portion, but before you talk about what are the various constitutional protections or safeguard provided, can you give me a logic behind why is this protection or why is this safeguards provided for tribal areas, right? So give me that logic here, and once you're done with that logic, then you come to the portion about what are the protections that are there in the constitution. Okay, so obviously the protections are like the logic that I've already talked about here is you've got measures, these measures are provided basically to safeguard their culture, also take care of the underdevelopment that is there, right? So it kind of provides those area with a cushion so that they can develop in their own manner and are not exploited by other sections of the society, right? So the second portion here is talking about the protections under the constitution. Now this is something that is very static. This can directly be picked from your books, that is Lakshmikant, and I think this portion you should be aware about this portion very comprehensively. So again what you can do is you can divide this portion into 2-3 portions, like you can place all the executive powers or executive safeguards that are provided in one section. Another is the legislative related powers that are there. Tribal Advisory Council is also one region. And what about some measures that are provided to ensure the welfare, that is peace and good governance of that particular region, right? So all these points are very elaborately given in your books. Please go through them. It is also important from prelims point of view. And then what you can do is, once you've talked about why the protection has been given, what are the various protections that have been given, then you can talk about some issues with respect to 5th schedule. Now again the issues are multiple, like there are issues with respect to legislative. When you compare the legislative rights that are given in the 6th schedule, they are pretty much elaborate as compared to the 5th schedule, right? So that is a bit of a problem there, that is the limitation there. Also TAC has been more or less an advisory council and not been able to brought about a bigger change. So you can like this talk about some of the issues that are there with respect to 5th schedule, and then comes your conclusion in which as a way forward you can bring in elements of committees that have been set up till now who have recommended certain reforms with respect to 5th schedule. And I think Kaka committee is the latest one. So you can quote some other committees also like I've written here, but I think Kaka committee recommendations, you can mention 2-3 recommendations here and then conclude your answer. I think that would play out to be a good comprehensive answer with respect to this portion. I hope a lot of portion, like especially the portion with respect to protection under the constitution is something very important. If you miss out on that portion, you will not get good score in this answer. But the area, say issues with respect to 5th schedule or why the protection is needed, this area is something that you are adding innovation into your answer, and I think this will give you certain extra bonus points, right? So I think we are done with the first question. Let's look into the second question of the day. The second question of the day is also an interesting question. Now the question is pretty small and simple. So the reorganization of states in India is an unfinished task. Discuss. Now the reorganization of state is something that we have learned in our history books when we talk about when we got independence, and at that point of time the British provinces and even the kingdoms, they had to be brought together, and there was certain kind of reorganization of states that were taking place, and that went on for next few certain years because some states were further divided based upon the language, culture. So that reorganization took place, and I think this reorganization has been taking place up till now. We have certain states like Telangana was one of the state which again is a new state that was added to the Union of India. So yeah, so this is the basic question here. The understanding of this question is that reorganization started with our independence and it is still continuing. So you have to elaborate upon this particular idea. So if you look into the introduction part, now in the introduction part, like I told you that this was actually a historical activity. So in the introduction, talk about that historical activity, like how did in the past reorganization started, what were the reasons behind it, in which situation did reorganization of states took place in India. So talk about that, give me a brief introduction, like a basic foundation to the question by bringing in the historical element, all right. So that is going to give us idea about reorganization of reorganization of states from the past point of view. In the body, what we're going to talk about is, since in the past, you know, the reorganization took place, so what did that past or historical reorganization had impact on India, on various regions and India as a whole. So you can talk about this particular aspect, right? Again, this portion will be a very small portion, right? It is just giving us a brief idea about what that historical portion of reorganization affected each and every state, right? So that, and there can be always positive and negative aspects to it, right? So again, this will be a small portion. The basic portion in the body which you have to talk in detail is giving reasons of why this particular reorganization is an unfinished task. And what you can do is you can pick up certain examples from the current affairs here, right? So bring in a lot of different ideas here. You can talk about regionalism. Regionalism is still present in India, and there have been a lot of demand on creation of states based upon regionalism. Then there have been the idea of language and culture being the prime basic requirement for a state creation has actually opened a lot of different Pandora boxes, where a lot of people in a particular state have been demanding a new creation of state because they do not identify their culture or language with that particular state. So that is also one thing that you can talk about. You can talk about how on different boundaries, like we have got this issue of Belgaum. So that has been a kind of concern between two states. So how boundary issues have been cropping up, right? So there are different elements to it. You can talk about Bodoland related initiative with respect to reorganization of state that is taking place. You can talk about that. So there are a lot of different elements that you can bring in, get in current affairs and write those ideas here, right? And finally, when you are concluding this answer, see, when you're concluding this answer, always have a balanced approach, because when you're creating state, see, language and culture and the ideas of, say, the freedom to carry forward your particular cultural identity is important. But at the end of it, you have to remember that creation of state will also depend upon the economic cost that is associated with it, and also the administrative cost that is associated with it. So it's not just one portion that you have to look into. So any future strategy that would be devised with respect to reorganization of states will have to take care of both the elements. And that is the idea you can put forward here. Also, what you can do is you can bring in certain committees, you can quote some committees here, their recommendations with respect to reorganization of state. Like in the past, we've learned 2-3 committees. There was this JPV committee, there was Faisal Ali committee, SK Dhar committee. So you can talk about these committees also in your answer, maybe in the introduction or in the conclusion. So yeah, I think this is a good question, an interesting question. Do bring in a lot of current affairs if you can. You can also use certain previous states which were created based upon these ideas that you're trying to bring in. Alright, so yeah guys, that was day 7 for you. And I hope you were able to write a lot of these different answers. And if you have any other doubts or any other concerns with respect to answer writing, you can write it in the comment section, and we'll reach out to you over there. And thank you so much for watching today's video. Take care and all the best.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.